On behalf of Amundi, I would like to thank you for participating in this forum, both in physical and digital format. I would like to thank all the speakers who shared their convictions with us, as well as the teams who work to make this event a success. This year again, the discussions during the forum showed that we are experiencing a great transformation of the world, politically, economically, and socially. As Hillary Clinton and Mr. Ferguson just pointed out at the start of this forum, we have entered an era of a broad reshuffling of the world's equilibria. The COVID crisis and now the war in Ukraine have accelerated this trend. It's now clear that the repercussion of these events will lead not to the end of globalization, but rather to it being reshaped from the form we have been familiar since the mid-90s. The rise of China and its emergence as a competing world power versus the United States are a major turning point. Since the Berlin Wall fell, the US enjoyed an hegemonic status militarily, politically, economically, and culturally. This period could be regarded as a convergence of economic models around financial capitalism and a political model of liberal democracy. 20 years after China joined the WTO, and after a stable government was restored in Russia, not only it's clear that these two countries do not intend to adopt the American model, but rather that they are reaffirming their strategic independence. Keep in mind, moreover, that many non-Western countries choose not to condemn Russia earlier this year, nor to level sanctions against it. So we are seeing both the emergence of new powers and the disalignment of countries, emerging market ones in particular, which prefer to choose sides, not to choose sides, but rather to stay on the sidelines amidst these geopolitical shifts. The second reconfiguration consists of how we produce and trade goods and services while meeting the challenge of the century, which is the climate change challenge. Protecting our planet is a universal cause, and the need for an energy transition requires a true industrial revolution. This begins, of course, with our energy supply, as we'll have to replace fossil energy, which currently accounts for 80% of our energy consumption in the world, with renewable energies. Mary Burns-Worlick of the International Energy Agency reminded us of what is at stake. But this transition also involves production modes, value chains, and trade. So it's an almost complete overhaul of our economies that is in progress. Companies must adapt to this dual geopolitical and economic reconfiguration. They must put in new strategies that include regionalized value chains while taking climate constraints into account, that's to say, integrate the cost of CO2 emission into their performance metrics. Another turning point is the resurgence of inflation, driven by the post-COVID demand shock, but also geopolitical tension. Inflation is at 40-year high in the US and even 70-year high in Germany. While some factors involved are transitory, inflation will probably stay higher in the next decade than during the past 2 decades. We are therefore at the cusp of the end of one cycle and the beginning of a more inflationary era, which is driving interest rates up. This shift in interest rate trends after 40 years downwards will have repercussions on growth, corporate investment, and valuation of financial assets. This is, in turn, will make the financial system more vulnerable. Companies' role will therefore have to be rethought in this new economic, geopolitical, financial, and climatic environment. Together, we will have to come up with a new political economy that takes into account the objectives of a fair energy transition and also the strategic sovereignty needed to protect our democracies. As we saw during the debate yesterday on Europe, very huge investment will be needed to achieve the strategic autonomy it aspires to. The new challenges that we face will require an alignment of interests between governments, companies, and investors. We must remove ourselves from a way of thinking in which governments observe from afar while merely tweaking the rules, while companies are not focused enough on serving the interests of the countries where they operate. Europe can no longer settle for being a large open market while ignoring its strategic interests. Governments must reinforce their role in defining the framework of public policies in the key sectors: energy, transport, housing, and farming. They have to enact the industrial policies needed for transforming the economy. Companies will be on the front lines of this overhaul of the economic model. So, what are the investment consequences? The financial system, I mean banks, asset managers, asset owners, will have a major role to play in allocating capital, not just on the basis of financial metrics, but also while taking into account the industrial and environmental stakes involved. In fact, we'll have to revisit the capital objective of profitability as they were defined in the mid-90s. These do not appear to be suited to financing the huge investment needed for the energy transition, and I would say that most of them look counterproductive. Also, if the goal is to rebalance the sharing of added value between capital and labor, which is a key factor to maintain social cohesion. Finance must also give companies the resources necessary to implement their strategies of the long term. The end of the cycle of falling interest rates and of cheap money will lead to greater selectiveness in investments. There will be winners and there will be losers. One key factor in the new inflationary environment will be companies' pricing power. It's up to asset managers like Amundi to identify those factors and help our clients safely navigate in the change of regime. Lastly, directional investment strategy will be far more difficult to set up. We must think in terms of regional allocation based on precise financial and extra-financial criteria, and of course, active management of the exposures. This makes our advisory role essential for all our clients. As the Nobel in Economics Daniel Kahneman pointed out, individual investors' decisions are affected by the noise. They need advice, but so do institutional investors. From its creation, Amundi chose to integrate ESG criteria and more recently, key climate challenges within its strategy. Our global leadership in asset management, with a footprint in all regions and all asset classes, allows us to meet the new challenges discussed during this forum. We are intellectually and operationally prepared and, we think, well placed to serve our clients during this phase of broad overhaul. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear colleagues, this forum, which is coming to an end, offers the opportunity to discuss many topics for the future. Asset managers like Amundi are clearly engaged in the great transformation of the world and offer resilience in a time of unknowns. We must respond to the major challenges of the present and the future, and first and foremost to the regime shifts in financial market. The men and women of Amundi will continue to offer efficient investment solutions in this period of change. Thank you again for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the Amundi World Investment Forum 2033. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chairman.
And a tremendous thank you to all of you, the distinguished guests, for joining us over the last 2 days, as well as all the speakers who participated.
In fact, we had 400, no, how many was it? It was
650.
650 people who attended over the last 2 days.
That's true. From 50 countries, might I add. Now, over the last 2 days, we've addressed a number of critical issues facing the world today. Olivier Blanchard affirmed that we need to rethink the instruments of monetary policy, but offered 9-to-1 odds on Pascal Blanquet's Back to the Future strategy versus Back to the 70s.
We also had Mary Bursworlick of the IEA remind us that while public policy can provide support, governments can't recover the vast investments needed for the energy transition. And Sylvie Goulard pointed out that private investors are uniquely placed to cooperate in this fraught geopolitical context.
And we had Alberto De Paoli, the CFO of Enel, who urged leadership in every industry to find the path to sustainability that makes business sense rather than selling a ticket to heaven. And the panel headed by Amundi's Jean-Jacques Barbery concurred on the need for consistent, predictable standards.
Delano, in your discussions on Finance 3.0, Anna Maria Lusardi summed up the core issues saying, we need to make it as easy to save as it is to buy. We'll remember that. And Dinesh Kara pointed out that navigating financial markets will become part of most citizens' lives. And while financial institutions can help, thanks to fintech, a human interface is critical. And of course, the human interface would do well to remember Daniel Kahneman's affirmation that where AI can give advice, then humans should take it.
And of course, Secretary Clinton just gave us a lot to think about given the current climate we're going through. And I believe the media team have put together a short recap of the day's events.